I found out my wife had a secret OnlyFans where she filmed with men I actually knew, so I waited for her biggest night of the year to show everyone. My name is Grant Sullivan, I'm 35. My wife, Melissa, is 33. We'd been married 7 years, together just over a decade. No kids, though we talked about it constantly in that vague, someday, way people do when they assume time is unlimited. We lived in a quiet cul-de-sac in Overland Park, Kansas. We had a golden retriever named Ranger who shed on everything and greeted Melissa like she'd returned from war every time she came home from work. I worked as a county building inspector. Not glamorous, but stable government pay. Melissa worked in brand partnerships for a cosmetics company based out of Kansas City, lots of networking events, influencer dinners, launch parties, that kind of thing. If anything, I thought her job sounded exhausting. She was the social one. The polished one. The one who could walk into a room of strangers and leave with 3 new friends and 2 business contacts. I was content being background noise. People always said we balanced each other out. Looking back now, that phrase feels less like a compliment and more like a warning sign I didn't understand. Nothing about our marriage screamed crisis. We didn't fight much. We weren't wildly affectionate either, but I chalked that up to routine. Sex had slowed down over the past couple years, but she blamed stress, hormones, late nights, travel. I believed her because the alternative never even crossed my mind. Melissa wasn't secretive, exactly. She just had a lot going on. After-work events, girls' nights, weekend brand trips. I figured that was the price of being married to someone ambitious. If she came home late, she'd usually smell like perfume samples and restaurant food. Sometimes wine. She'd kick off her heels, complain about how exhausting everything was, and collapse onto the couch beside me. "Your job is so peaceful," she'd say. "No drama. No fake people." I used to laugh. If I'd known what was actually happening, I don't think I would have been able to look at her without shaking. Everything started on a Tuesday night in early April. I was in the garage trying to fix a loose cabinet hinge while Ranger supervised by lying directly in the way. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it at first, assuming it was spam or a work email. It buzzed again. When I checked, it was a text from Tyler Dawson, a friend I'd known since my early 20s. We weren't inseparable, but we'd kept in touch: barbecues, football games, the occasional beer at Copper Rail Tavern. The message read, "Hey man, this is super awkward but I think I just saw Melissa online." I frowned at the screen, confused more than alarmed. Online where? Instagram? LinkedIn? Melissa posted constantly for work. I typed back, "What do you mean?" A few seconds passed. Then the typing bubble appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, a link popped up. No explanation. Just a link. Something about that hesitation made my stomach tighten. I wiped my hands on a rag, stepped out of the garage, and sat on the edge of the kitchen counter before opening it. Melissa was upstairs getting ready for bed. I could hear the shower running faintly through the ceiling. The page loaded slowly, like it had all the time in the world. When it finished, I felt my brain go weirdly quiet. It was an OnlyFans profile. For a split second, I almost laughed out of relief. Plenty of women looked similar. The internet is full of strangers. The profile photo showed a cropped image, just a woman's mouth, chin, collarbone. No eyes. No full face. Then details started lining up one by one like tumblers in a lock. A tiny beauty mark just below the left corner of her lip. A delicate gold necklace with a small oval pendant. My gift. 3rd anniversary. My pulse started hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. "No," I muttered out loud. "No, that's not." I clicked the profile anyway. Inside were dozens of posts, most blurred behind a paywall. Suggestive captions. Teasers. Subscriber counts. Tips. Custom requests. The username wasn't anything close to Melissa's name, but the bio had that same playful, slightly sarcastic tone she used in texts. My hands had started shaking. I told myself I was being paranoid. People have similar jewelry. Similar marks. Similar everything. Then I saw a preview photo that showed part of a woman's hip. There was a small crescent-shaped scar just above it. Melissa had gotten that scar falling off a bike when she was 13. She'd told the story so many times I could recite it. I didn't feel shock anymore. I felt hollow. Like something had been scooped out of my chest. Upstairs, the shower turned off. Pipes creaked. Normal sounds of normal life. Downstairs, I sat frozen on the kitchen counter staring at my wife's secret life. I don't know how long I stayed like that. 10 minutes, maybe. Maybe an hour. Time didn't feel real anymore. Eventually my phone buzzed again. Tyler, dude, I'm really sorry if that's not her. Just looked familiar. I typed back slowly, each letter deliberate. Yeah. Not her. Then I set the phone down and stared at the wall. Because some part of me wasn't ready to say it out loud yet. Not even in a text message. Melissa came downstairs a few minutes later in sweatpants and one of my old t-shirts, hair damp, face clean, looking exactly like the woman I'd gone to sleep beside for years. She smiled when she saw me. You're still up? I thought you'd be asleep. I nodded, because words felt dangerous. Just finishing something, I said. She walked over, kissed the top of my head, and grabbed a glass from the cabinet. Don't stay up too late, she said casually. I've got an early meeting tomorrow. I watched her drink water at the sink, completely unaware that her entire world had already collapsed, she just didn't know it yet. Then she set the glass down, turned off the kitchen light, and headed back upstairs. Love you, she called over her shoulder. My mouth moved automatically. Love you too. The lie came out smoothly. Effortlessly. Like my body had decided to protect her even while my brain was falling apart. After I heard the bedroom door close, I picked up my phone again. My thumb hovered over the screen for a long time. Then I did the thing I would later hate myself for most. I subscribed. The site loaded a grid of locked posts opening one by one, like doors I couldn't shut again. The first full video thumbnail appeared. It was Melissa. Not cropped. Not hidden. Just her. In our guest bedroom. On the bed where my parents had slept during holidays. Smiling at the camera in a way I had never seen before, not affectionate, not playful, but performative. Like she was someone else wearing her face. My stomach twisted violently. And then I noticed something worse. She wasn't alone. A man stepped into frame behind her. His face stayed out of view, but his arm wrapped around her waist. His forearm had a thick black tattoo, a jagged geometric pattern. I knew that tattoo. I'd seen it reaching for chips at my kitchen counter. I'd seen it lifting weights at Iron Forge Fitness while we nodded at each other between sets. Logan Price. A firefighter who lived 3 streets over. A guy who had stood in my backyard drinking beer and talking about football. I think that was the moment something inside me stopped trying to understand and started trying to survive. Upstairs, my wife slept peacefully. Downstairs, I sat in the dark watching my life fracture into pieces I didn't know how to put back together. And the worst part? I didn't confront her. Not that night. Not the next day. Because once you say it out loud, it becomes real. And I think some part of me was still hoping I could wake up and none of it would exist. But deep down, I already knew. Nothing about my marriage was what I thought it was. And whatever came next, wasn't going to be quiet. I didn't sleep that night. Not even for a minute. I just sat there in the dark with the glow of my phone lighting up the kitchen, scrolling through video after video like I was digging through evidence at a crime scene, except the victim was my marriage and the suspect was asleep upstairs. Every time I thought, okay, that's enough, my thumb kept moving anyway. It wasn't curiosity. It wasn't even pain anymore. It was compulsion. If this was real, and by that point I knew it was, then I needed to understand how deep it went. How long? How many lies? How many people? The timestamp stretched back 2 years. 2 entire years of posts. Hundreds of them. Some solo, some not. Custom content requests. Tips from subscribers. Private messages she'd responded to. 2 years. I tried to anchor myself to specific memories from that time, vacations, holidays, random Saturdays, and now every single one felt contaminated, like someone had scribbled over them in permanent marker. There was a video posted last October. I recognized the date immediately because it was the weekend I'd gone to Wichita to help my dad after his knee surgery. Melissa had hugged me goodbye in the driveway, told me to drive safe, text her when I arrived. In the video, she was in our bedroom wearing the blue sweater I'd bought her for Christmas. With someone else. I swallowed hard, while creeping up the back of my throat. Then there were the captions. Playful. Flirty. Confident. Almost smug. Missed me tonight? Hubby's working late, your turn. That last one made my hands go cold. Working late. I worked late a lot. Emergencies, inspections running long, paperwork. She'd been using my schedule as marketing material. At some point Murphy padded into the kitchen, tail wagging, nails clicking on the tile. He nudged my leg, sensing something was off. I reached down and scratched behind his ears, grateful for the contact with something innocent. Hey buddy, I whispered hoarsely. You don't lie, right? He licked my hand. It was stupid, but I almost cried. Around 3:30 a.m. I forced myself to stop. Not because I wanted to, but because my brain felt like it was overheating. I closed the app, set the phone face down, and just sat there listening to the hum of the refrigerator. Upstairs, Melissa shifted in bed. I could hear the faint creak through the ceiling. Normal sounds. That was the cruelest part, the world hadn't changed at all. Only my understanding of it had. When morning came, I hadn't moved from the kitchen. Melissa came downstairs dressed for work, hair done, makeup flawless, phone already in hand. She looked completely ordinary. Completely untouched by the disaster she'd caused. "Whoa," she said lightly when she saw me. "Did you even go to bed?" "Couldn't sleep," I said. Technically true. She poured coffee, scrolling through something on her phone, probably emails or social media. The smell made my stomach turn. "You okay?" she asked, not really looking at me. "Yeah. Just tired." She nodded like that explanation made perfect sense. Then she walked over and kissed my cheek. The contact made my skin crawl, which immediately filled me with guilt. This was still my wife. My brain kept trying to reconcile the two versions of her and failing. "I'll be late tonight," she added. "Client dinner." Of course she would be. "Okay," I said. She grabbed her bag, bent down to pet Murphy, and left like any other morning. The garage door opened, closed, and then the house was silent again. The moment her car pulled away, I stood up so fast my chair scraped loudly across the floor. I didn't even remember deciding to do it. I opened the OnlyFans app again. This time I wasn't scrolling blindly. I was studying. Cross-referencing. Noticing patterns. She posted most often during weekday afternoons, when I was at work. Late nights when I had on-call shifts. Weekends when I visited family or went fishing with friends. Every gap in my presence had been filled with something else. And the men. At first they were anonymous. Faces carefully cropped, voices muffled. But the longer I watched, the more details slipped through. A watch I'd seen before, bulky black sports model with a distinctive scratch across the bezel. A pair of sneakers someone wore to our 4th of July barbecue. A laugh that sounded painfully familiar. Then I found another video with Logan, the firefighter from down the street, and this one had audio clear enough to hear him speak. "Relax," he murmured off camera. "You're doing great." I'd heard that voice across a grill while he flipped burgers. My hand started shaking so badly I had to set the phone down. I stumbled to the sink and splashed cold water on my face, breathing hard like I'd just run upstairs. "This isn't real," I whispered to my reflection. But it was. Later that afternoon I drove to Iron Forge Fitness even though I had no intention of working out. I just sat in my car in the parking lot watching people go in and out. Logan's truck was there. Big red pickup, firefighter decals on the back window. I stared at it for a long time. I kept imagining walking inside, grabbing him by the collar, demanding answers. Or punching him. Or screaming. Instead, I just sat there gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Because none of that would fix anything. Eventually I drove home. That night Melissa texted me around 7:12 p.m. "Dinner going long. Miss you." My phone buzzed again at 7:18. OnlyFans notification. New post from her account. I opened it before I could stop myself. Same outfit she'd worn when she left the house. Same hairstyle. Same lipstick. Different setting. A hotel room, judging by the generic artwork and beige bedding. I stared at the screen until everything went blurry. She wasn't just doing this in the past. She was doing it right now. While texting me. Something inside my chest tightened so hard it actually hurt. I set the phone down very carefully, like it might explode, and just sat there staring at the wall for a long time. When she came home after 10 p.m., she smelled like expensive perfume and restaurant food. She kicked off her heels, groaned dramatically, and collapsed onto the couch. "Ugh, I am dead," she said. "Corporate dinners should be illegal." I watched her from across the room, trying to see the woman from the videos and the woman sitting in front of me. "How was your day?" she asked casually. "Fine," I said. She smiled, satisfied, and leaned her head back. For a moment, I wondered if she believed her own version of reality. If compartmentalizing had become so normal that she no longer saw this as betrayal. Or maybe she just didn't think I'd ever find out. Over the next few days, my life turned into a bizarre double existence. Outwardly, everything looked the same. Work, errands, small talk, shared meals. Internally, I was cataloging evidence like an investigator. Screenshots of posts. Dates. Subscriber counts. Comments. Anything that might matter later, though I didn't even know what later meant yet. I also started noticing other things. Melissa guarded her phone more carefully than before. Took it into the bathroom. Flipped it face down when she set it on the table. Had she always done that? Or had I just never paid attention? One night she announced she was having a girls' wine night at Chloe Mercer's apartment, her best friend, the event planner. Don't wait up, she said cheerfully. We're probably going to watch trash TV and complain about men. I nodded, forcing a smile. Have fun. After she left, I sat in the dark living room, phone in hand, feeling like I was waiting for test results I already knew would be bad. At 9:03 p.m., a new post appeared. The video thumbnail showed Melissa laughing, leaning back on a bed. A man's arm wrapped around her waist. Full sleeve tattoo, intricate black and gray design spiraling from wrist to shoulder. Not Logan this time. I zoomed in, heart pounding. I recognized it. Aaron Whitfield. Our neighbor. The guy who borrowed my ladder last summer. The guy whose kids handed out Halloween candy with Melissa at the door. The guy who waved every morning when we pulled out of our driveways at the same time. I actually gagged, dry heaving into my fist. The sense of violation wasn't just physical anymore. It was territorial. Social. Existential. My house. My street. My life. Nothing felt safe. I don't remember falling asleep that night, but at some point exhaustion knocked me out on the couch. When I woke up just before dawn, Murphy was curled against my legs and the TV was still glowing silently. Upstairs, Melissa slept peacefully. I stood there at the bottom of the stairs for a long time, looking up into the darkness. Part of me wanted to storm in there and drag the truth into the light. To force her to explain how she could look at me every day and still do this. But another part, colder, quieter, more dangerous, kept whispering. Not yet. Because once you confront someone, the game changes. They lie. They minimize. They spin the story. They prepare defenses. Right now, she thought she was safe. And for the first time since discovering everything, I realized something unsettling. I didn't want to fight. I wanted the truth. All of it. And something told me the truth wasn't going to come from her voluntarily. The confrontation didn't happen in a dramatic explosion like you'd expect. No screaming. No thrown objects. No neighbors calling the police. It happened on a completely ordinary Sunday afternoon while Murphy snored at our feet and sunlight came through the living room blinds like nothing in the world was wrong. I had spent nearly 2 weeks collecting everything. Screenshots, timestamps, financial clues, backup copies stored on a cloud account she didn't know existed. Not because I had a master plan yet, just because I needed proof that I wasn't losing my mind. That Sunday, Melissa was sitting cross-legged on the couch scrolling through her phone, occasionally laughing at something only she could see. She looked relaxed, comfortable, completely at ease inside a life that no longer existed for me. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth, but my voice came out strangely calm. Melissa. She glanced up. Yeah. I held out my phone. Can you explain this? She took it casually at first, expecting maybe a funny video or something work-related. The second her eyes focused, her entire body went still. Not shocked. Not panicked. Frozen. Like a statue that had just realized it might crack. The screen showed her OnlyFans profile, fully open, unmistakable. For a long moment she didn't say anything. Murphy lifted his head, sensing tension, then laid it back down. Finally she exhaled slowly and handed the phone back. How did you find that? Not what is this? Not it's not what you think. Not even denial. Just how? A friend sent me the link, I said. She nodded once, almost thoughtfully, like she was processing logistics rather than consequences. Then she said, in the calmest voice I've ever heard from her. It's just business. Something inside me cracked at that word. Business. Not mistake. Not regret. Not apology. Business. I stared at her, waiting for the follow-up that never came. You've been sleeping with these men, I said flatly. She shrugged, a small defensive movement. For content, yes. The room felt suddenly airless. So that's a yes. It's not emotional, she said quickly. It's transactional. There's a difference. I actually laughed, but it sounded wrong, thin and hollow. A difference to who? She frowned slightly, like I was being unreasonable. Grant, this isn't the 1950s. People do this. It's online work. With our neighbors? I asked quietly. Her jaw tightened. With people I know? Silence. That silence told me more than any confession could. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, trying to keep my hands from shaking. How long? She hesitated. Not because she didn't know, because she was deciding what number to give. About 2 years. 2 years. The number hit me like a physical blow even though I already suspected it. 2 years, I repeated. You've been lying to me every day for 2 years. I wasn't lying, she said, a hint of irritation creeping in. I just didn't tell you. I looked at her, genuinely stunned. That's the same thing. No, it isn't, she snapped. You never asked. I actually leaned back, trying to process the logic. So if I never asked whether you were secretly filming sex videos with people from our neighborhood, you figured that was fine? You're twisting it, she said. You're making it sound dirty. It is dirty. It's work, she shot back. It made me feel confident. Independent. I didn't have to rely on anyone. You weren't relying on anyone, I said. We both work. We share bills. You don't get it, she said, voice rising slightly. It's not about money. It's about autonomy. I stared at her, realizing this conversation wasn't about me at all. Did you ever think about what this would do to me? I asked quietly. She rolled her eyes, actually rolled her eyes. I knew you'd overreact. Overreact. Like discovering your spouse has a secret sex life is equivalent to complaining about dirty dishes. Were any of them strangers? I asked. She didn't answer. Her eyes flicked away toward the window. That was enough. I nodded slowly. Right. Then she said the sentence that changed everything. You don't own my body. Not shouted. Not emotional. Just stated like a legal fact. And something inside me went completely still. Because she was right, in a vacuum, that statement is true. But in the context of marriage, secrecy, and betrayal, it felt like she was deliberately missing the point. I don't want to own your body, I said quietly. I wanted to trust my wife. She crossed her arms. You still can. I blinked at her. I literally can't, I said. You've been living a double life. You're being dramatic. That word landed harder than anything else. Not angry. Not devastated. Dramatic. I looked around the living room, our couch, our photos on the wall, Murphy sleeping peacefully, and it all suddenly felt like a set from a show I didn't remember auditioning for. How many? I asked. She sighed. Why does that matter? Because I deserve to know. Grant, obsessing over details isn't healthy. I stood up abruptly and walked to the window, needing space. My hands were trembling now, adrenaline finally breaking through the numbness. You put my health at risk, I said without turning around. I was careful. That's not the point. She didn't respond. I realized then that she genuinely did not see herself as the villain here. In her mind, this was empowerment, secrecy justified by autonomy, consequences secondary to personal fulfillment. And that terrified me more than anger would have. Eventually I turned back toward her. Are you planning to stop? I asked. Another pause. I don't know, she said finally. It's a big part of my income now. Income. I laughed again, harsher this time. Of course it is. She looked annoyed. Why are you acting like this is some kind of catastrophe? I stared at her, searching for even a flicker of remorse. There wasn't any. That's when I realized something important. This conversation wasn't going to fix anything. There was no breakthrough moment coming. No tears, no apologies, no reconciliation speech. The woman in front of me wasn't the person I thought I married. And she wasn't going to become that person just because I wanted her to. I'm sleeping in the guest room tonight, I said quietly. She blinked, surprised, not hurt, just surprised. Seriously? Yes. Grant, that's ridiculous. I don't think I can share a bed with you right now. She threw up her hands. Fine. Be dramatic. I walked past her without responding. In the guest room, I sat on the edge of the bed in the dark, listening to the muffled sounds of the house settling. The same house that suddenly didn't feel like home. Murphy padded in a few minutes later and jumped up beside me, resting his head on my thigh. I scratched his ears automatically, grateful for the simple loyalty of an animal. Down the hall, I heard Melissa moving around, opening drawers, brushing her teeth, going through her normal nighttime routine. Normal. Like nothing had happened. For the next week, we barely spoke beyond logistical necessities. Groceries. Mail. The dog. She acted more irritated than guilty, like my distance was an inconvenience she had to tolerate. Meanwhile, something inside me was changing. The initial shock had burned away, leaving something colder behind. Not rage exactly. Not sadness either. Clarity. I stopped asking questions. Stopped reacting. Stopped trying to understand. Instead, I started planning. Because for the first time since all this began, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to scream, beg, or implode. And I definitely wasn't going to let her walk away from this with her reputation intact while I carried the wreckage alone. If my marriage was ending, and by that point I knew it was, then the truth was coming with it. And I was going to decide when. Once I stopped trying to save the marriage, everything got easier. Not better. Not less painful. Just, simpler. There's a strange calm that comes when you accept something is over. All the energy you were pouring into denial suddenly has nowhere to go, so it turns into focus instead. Melissa and I existed in the same house like distant roommates. We coordinated dog walks, paid bills, passed each other in hallways with polite nods. She stopped trying to argue. I stopped trying to understand. If she noticed the change in me, she didn't comment on it. Which worked in my favor. Because I wasn't drifting. I was documenting. Every spare moment went into gathering information. Not obsessively, not frantically, methodically. Like I was auditing a company I already knew was corrupt. Financial statements first. We had a joint account for household expenses and separate personal accounts for everything else. I'd never cared before. We trusted each other. Now I combed through months of transactions. Melissa had been contributing less and less to shared expenses over the past year while our bills hadn't changed. At the time I assumed she'd had extra work costs or travel expenses. In reality, she'd been redirecting money somewhere else. I eventually found it, a separate bank account in her name only, opened 18 months earlier. Transfers from both her paycheck and, occasionally, from our joint account labeled vaguely as savings adjustments. My stomach tightened when I saw the balance. It wasn't life-changing money, but it wasn't small either. Tens of thousands. Enough to start over comfortably. Enough to suggest this had never been a temporary experiment. She had been building an exit fund. At the same time, she was still using our shared money to pay for groceries, utilities, property taxes, all the mundane costs of the life she was secretly planning to leave. I took screenshots. Exported statements. Backed everything up in multiple places. Then I checked something else I'd been avoiding. Health. One Tuesday morning I called in sick to work and drove to a clinic across town where no one would recognize me. Sitting in that waiting room felt surreal, like I was living someone else's life. The nurse asked routine questions in a neutral tone. Any known exposure risks? I hesitated, then said quietly, possibly. She didn't react. Just typed. The tests took less than an hour. The waiting took days. When the results finally came back clean, I sat in my car gripping the steering wheel, overwhelmed by relief so intense it almost made me dizzy. At least one thing hadn't been taken from me. By then I had also consulted a lawyer. Rebecca Holt's office was in a modern glass building near downtown Kansas City, all clean lines and neutral colors. She looked exactly like you'd want a high-conflict divorce attorney to look, calm, sharp, impossible to rattle. I told her everything. Not dramatically, just factually. She listened without interrupting, occasionally jotting notes. When I finished, she leaned back slightly and said, "Do you have evidence?" "Yes." "Financial records?" "Yes." "Proof of infidelity?" I hesitated. "Yes." She nodded, satisfied. In Kansas, marital misconduct can still influence asset division under certain circumstances, she explained. Especially if marital funds were used or hidden. Used or hidden. Both applied. She asked one final question before outlining next steps. "Does your wife know you've consulted an attorney?" "No." "Good," she said simply. "Keep it that way for now." Walking out of that office, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt like I'd crossed an invisible line. There was no version of this story where we reconciled anymore. From that point on, everything had an end date. Around the same time, Melissa started planning her birthday. Her 34th. Normally we kept birthdays low-key, dinner, maybe drinks with friends. This year she wanted something big. "I found the perfect venue," she said one evening, excitement lighting up her face in a way I hadn't seen in months. "Chloe knows the owner. It's going to be gorgeous." I nodded, stirring pasta mechanically. "Sounds nice. It's going to be my year," she continued. "Fresh start energy, you know. Fresh start." The phrase stuck in my head long after she left the room. She showed me photos of the venue, Blue Lantern Event Hall, a sleek modern space with exposed brick, hanging lights, a built-in stage and projector. Fancy but not over the top. "We'll invite everyone," she said. "Friends, co-workers, neighbors. Make it a real celebration." Everyone. I wondered how many of those friends already knew parts of her secret life. "Do you mind helping cover half?" she asked casually. "I've already put down a deposit." Of course she had. I transferred the money without argument. If she noticed how easily I agreed, she didn't say anything. Over the next few weeks, the house filled with delivery boxes, decorations, outfits, party favors, things that screamed I am the main character tonight. Meanwhile, we continued living in our quiet stalemate. No intimacy. Minimal conversation. No acknowledgement of the disaster sitting between us. Once, late at night, I heard her laughing softly on the phone in the backyard. Not a work laugh. Not a polite laugh. An intimate one. I didn't go outside. I didn't need more proof. By the week of the party, I had assembled everything I needed. Financial documentation. Evidence of hidden income. Screenshots of her account. Backup copies stored on a secure drive. And one additional thing. A small flash drive. I didn't fill it with explicit content. I wasn't trying to traumatize people or commit a crime. Just clear, undeniable proof, her profile page, subscriber counts, earnings estimates, dates. Enough to shatter plausible deniability without crossing into something legally dangerous. I kept it in my desk drawer for days, occasionally opening the drawer just to confirm it was still there. Part of me hoped something would stop me. That she'd apologize, or confess, or show even a flicker of remorse that would make revenge feel unnecessary. Nothing came. If anything, she seemed happier. Lighter. Excited for her fresh start. The morning of the party, she moved through the house like she was preparing for a wedding, hair appointment, makeup trial, outfit laid out carefully across the bed. She paused in the doorway of the guest room where I'd been sleeping. "Are you coming tonight?" she asked. There was a hint of uncertainty in her voice for the first time. "Yes," I said. Relief washed across her face. "Good," she said. "It would have been weird if you didn't." Weird. Not heartbreaking. Not devastating. Weird. That word settled something final inside me. After she left for the salon, I walked slowly through the empty house. Every room held memories that now felt like artifacts from someone else's life. Photos on the walls. Vacation souvenirs. Murphy's toys scattered across the floor. I knelt down and scratched behind his ears. "Things are going to change, buddy," I murmured. He wagged his tail, oblivious. That afternoon I showered, shaved carefully, and put on the charcoal suit I usually reserved for weddings and funerals. In a way, it felt appropriate for both. In the mirror, I looked normal. Calm. Almost composed. Not like a man about to detonate his own life. Before leaving, I opened the desk drawer one last time and picked up the flash drive. It was absurdly small for something carrying that much weight. I slipped it into my pocket. The drive to the venue felt strangely peaceful. Traffic lights, radio chatter, the mundane rhythm of a city evening, all of it continuing as if nothing extraordinary was about to happen. When I arrived, the parking lot was already filling up. Music drifted faintly from inside. Laughter. Voices. Celebration. I sat in the car for a full minute with the engine running, hands resting on the steering wheel. This was the last moment I could turn around. Leave quietly. File for divorce. Let her spin whatever story she wanted while I disappeared into anonymity. No spectacle. No fallout. No collateral damage. Just silence. Instead, I turned off the engine. Because the truth is, I didn't want silence anymore. I wanted the version of events that included consequences. As I stepped out of the car and headed toward the glowing entrance of Blue Lantern Event Hall, I felt oddly steady. Not angry. Not shaking. Just resolved. Inside, people were laughing, drinking, celebrating a woman they thought they knew. And none of them had any idea what was about to happen. The Blue Lantern Event Hall looked like something out of a lifestyle magazine. Soft amber lighting, exposed brick walls, tall floral arrangements on every table. A DJ booth near the stage. A long bar glowing under pendant lights. People dressed like they were attending a small wedding instead of a birthday party. Music pulsed just loud enough to feel festive without drowning out conversation. For a moment, standing in the doorway, I felt disoriented, like I'd walked into someone else's life. Then I saw Melissa. She stood near the center of the room surrounded by people, wearing a fitted emerald dress that caught the light every time she moved. Hair perfectly styled, makeup flawless, smiling in that effortless way that used to make me proud to be beside her. She looked radiant. Untouchable. When she noticed me, her expression softened into something almost relieved. "Grant," she said, weaving through the crowd toward me. "You made it." She hugged me, carefully, politely, like we were distant relatives rather than spouses. I could smell her perfume, something floral and expensive. "You look really nice," she said, stepping back to look at me. "So do you," I replied. And it wasn't a lie. That was the surreal part. People greeted me as I moved through the room, handshakes, claps on the shoulder, casual small talk. Neighbors, co-workers, friends, people from her networking circles. Some of the men I recognized from the videos were there too. Logan stood near the bar laughing with another firefighter. Aaron chatted with a couple I vaguely knew from the neighborhood. Both of them nodded at me like nothing in the world was wrong. My pulse didn't spike. My hands didn't shake. I just observed. Chloe Mercer, Melissa's best friend and unofficial party commander, bustled around making sure everything ran smoothly. When she saw me, she grinned. "I'm so glad you came," she said. Melissa was worried. "Wouldn't miss it," I said. And I meant that too. For the next hour I drifted through conversations, sipping a drink I barely tasted. People talked about work, travel plans, kids, housing prices, the mundane chatter of people who assume life is stable. Meanwhile, my awareness kept returning to the small shape in my pocket. The flash drive felt heavier than it should have. At one point Melissa leaned close and said quietly, "Thank you for being here." I glanced at her. Of course. She smiled, genuinely touched, like this was some sign of reconciliation instead of the calm before impact. Eventually the DJ lowered the music and tapped the microphone. "All right everyone, can I get your attention for a moment?" People turned toward the small stage area, drinks in hand. Chloe stepped up first, giving a warm, slightly tipsy speech about friendship, ambition, and how proud she was of Melissa. The crowd applauded, a few people whistled. Then Chloe said, "And now I think Melissa's husband wants to say a few words." A ripple of approval moved through the room. My moment. I walked to the stage slowly, aware of dozens of eyes tracking me. Melissa stood just below the stage, smiling up at me with open expectation. The microphone felt strangely light in my hand. I took a breath. "I'll keep this short," I began, my voice steady over the speakers. "Melissa has always believed in being authentic, in not hiding who she really is." She nodded slightly, touched. "And I realized recently that there's a huge part of her life she's been too modest to share publicly." A few curious murmurs from the crowd. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the flash drive. So I thought I'd help. I handed it to the DJ, who plugged it into the system without hesitation. From his perspective, this was just another slideshow or video tribute. Behind me, the large projector screen flickered to life. The first image appeared. A screenshot of Melissa's OnlyFans profile page, blurred enough to avoid explicit content, but unmistakable. Username, profile picture, subscriber count, promotional bio. The room went silent in a way I had never heard before. Not quiet, stunned. People leaned forward, squinting, whispering. "What is that?" someone muttered. Melissa's smile faltered. She turned to look at the screen, confusion shifting rapidly into something else. Recognition. Color drained from her face so fast it was almost visible. The next slide appeared, an earnings estimate page showing monthly income figures. Thousands of dollars. A woman near the front gasped. Someone else whispered, "Oh my God." Melissa looked up at me, eyes wide, shaking her head in tiny panicked motions. "Grant," she whispered. I continued speaking, calm as ever. "I found out recently that my wife has been running a very successful online business for the past 2 years. One she chose not to tell me about. No shouting. No insults. Just facts." Behind me, the screen cycled through a few more non-explicit screenshots, dates, subscriber numbers, confirmation emails. Enough to erase any doubt. A murmur spread through the crowd, growing louder, fragmented. "Is this real? Wait, is that? Oh my God." Melissa climbed onto the stage, grabbing my arm hard enough to hurt. "Turn it off," she hissed, voice trembling with fury and panic. "Turn it off." I gently removed her hand. "I thought everyone deserved to know how hardworking you've been," I said into the microphone. Her eyes filled with tears, not soft crying, but rage tears, humiliation tears. "You're insane," she said under her breath. Below us, chaos was starting to bloom. I saw Logan staring at the floor, jaw clenched. Aaron's wife had her hand over her mouth, eyes darting between the screen and her husband. Several people were already pulling out phones, texting frantically. I set the microphone back on the stand. "I hope you have a wonderful birthday," I said quietly, not even into the mic. Then I stepped off the stage. No dramatic exit. No running. I just walked through the parted crowd like water moving around a rock. No one stopped me. Outside, the night air felt shockingly cool after the heat of the room. I inhaled deeply, my lungs burning like I'd been underwater. My hands weren't shaking. My heart wasn't racing. If anything, I felt empty. I got into my car, started the engine, and drove home. Murphy greeted me at the door, tail wagging wildly, oblivious to everything. I knelt down and buried my face in his fur for a moment, grounding myself. Then I packed a bag, clothes, toiletries, laptop, important documents I'd already gathered. Not frantic, just efficient. Within 30 minutes I was back in the car heading toward the Lakeside Suites Hotel on the edge of town. By the time I checked in, my phone was exploding. Texts. Calls. Notifications. Names lighting up the screen one after another. I silenced it. Up in the hotel room, I finally turned it back on. Dozens of messages. Some furious. Some supportive. Some simply stunned. Then Melissa called. I let it ring out the first time. The second time, I answered. Her voice was ragged, unrecognizable. "You destroyed my life," she said, no greeting, no preamble. I didn't respond. "You humiliated me in front of everyone," she continued, voice rising. "What is wrong with you? What did you think was going to happen?" I asked quietly. "I thought you were a decent person." The irony almost made me laugh. "You lied to me for 2 years," I said. "You involved people from our lives. You hid money. You risked my health." Silence on the other end. Then a shift, from rage to pleading. "Please don't do this," she said softly. "We can fix this. We can go to counseling. I'll stop. I swear I'll stop." I closed my eyes. 2 weeks earlier, that might have shattered me. Now it just sounded like damage control. "It's too late," I said. Her voice hardened instantly. "You're going to regret this," she snapped. "You didn't just hurt me. You hurt everyone." "I didn't make those choices," I replied. "You did." She hung up. Over the next day, the full fallout became clear. Multiple relationships in our social circle imploded. Arguments, accusations, people comparing timelines. Apparently more than one wife had recognized their husband's involvement from the screenshots. I hadn't planned that part. I hadn't needed to. Truth has a way of multiplying damage on its own. My lawyer filed for divorce that Monday. Because of the hidden finances and documented infidelity, Rebecca Holt was confident I'd keep the house. Melissa moved into a short-term apartment across town. We communicate only through attorneys now. Sometimes, late at night in the hotel room, I replay everything and wonder if I went too far. If there was a quieter way to end it that wouldn't have detonated half our social circle. But then I remember sitting alone in my kitchen watching those videos. Remember the casual lies. The complete lack of remorse. The way she expected to walk into a fresh start without consequences. And I don't feel guilt. Not exactly. Mostly I feel tired. The divorce isn't final yet, but it will be soon. Murphy is with me. The house will likely be too. Melissa's reputation, from what I hear, didn't survive the blast. Some people say I'm cruel. Some say I did what anyone would secretly want to do. Most just avoid me entirely. As for me, I don't feel victorious. I don't feel destroyed either. Just quieter. Like a storm passed through and left everything rearranged in ways that can't be undone. So that's where things stand now. I exposed my wife instead of leaving quietly. And sometimes I still wonder. Did I deliver justice? Or just become the kind of person I never thought I'd be?